Good afternoon, and welcome to the Taubman Museum of Art and Roanoke Arts Pop. I'm Cindy Peterson, the Executive Director, and it is such a pleasure to have you here today. Thank you for your support, for your care, for this museum, and for our community. How many of you have been out in the atrium and seen Roanoke Arts Pop alive? So, yay. Just a thank you to our support from Visit Virginia's Blue Ridge and 30 arts and cultural organizations that have been here Friday, Saturday, and Sunday with pop-up performances, interactive stations. You saw the stilt walkers, the caricature artists, a new organization, Roanoke Baroque, is here too, and museums, all of our arts and cultural. So this is our third year to really be a community convener in that way. We call it a winter celebration, but as we know, it's been kind of like spring these last couple of weeks. And then our guests said that too as they were coming in. What a beautiful space it is. Everything's blooming, everything's alive here at the museum. And we're so grateful to be able to present Roanoke Arts Pop, where this conversation is part of that. And we have a number of special guests here today from Portland, Oregon, from DC, from Santa Fe, and from New York. And so I would like to thank the board of directors and the curators from the National Museum of Women in the Arts. They have joined us today, Marcia Carlucci, Martha DePel, Nancy Duber, and Winnan Holiday, along with collector Tony Podesta, and also the Turner Carroll Gallery with Tanya and Michael. And it's such a pleasure to have them here with us. So a round of applause. They've traveled far to be here. And also, it's the Positive Fragmentation from Jordan Schnitzer's collection has been organized and curated from the National Museum of Women in the Arts. So we're just excited to be able to share that with our community and grateful in that way. We have another artist with us, Callie Curry, who's also appears under the name as Swoon. Callie, please stand. Yes. And she is a contemporary artist who works with printmaking, sculpture, and stop-motion animation to create immersive installations and community-based projects and public artworks. And as you know, we are all about being part of the community, working in the community, being with the community. And so I'm pleased to say that the Taubman Museum of Art is working with Callie Curry, known as Swoon, for our next banner exhibition opening in this November. A brief introduction to the panel, and then I'm going to hand it over to Dr. Karl Willers, our Chief Curator and Deputy Director of Collections and Exhibitions, to moderate the conversation. So a special thank you to Jordan. This is our second time working with Jordan and his collection. First, I think you remember Pop Power from Andy Warhol to Jeff Koons. And how many of you have seen Positive Fragmentation up in the galleries already? Wonderful. Well, and our galleries are open until 5 p.m. today. And I've heard throughout the audience just the that awe as you walked in, but also, I heard also I've always wanted to hear from a number of the artists, and we have two joining us on stage today. And Jordan, that generosity of support for Positive Fragmentation from the collection of Jordan D. Schnitzer and his family foundation features 180 prints by contemporary women artists who employ a strategy of fragmentation in their artistic process. And the foundation's mission to share this extensive post-war prints and paintings in the collections with museums like us. And we've been talking about that. The regional museums that can benefit from being able to have this extraordinary artwork here and having for our entire Roanoke area, but from wider, being able to come and enjoy. This collection exceeds
Thousands.
Thousands and thousands, exactly. And also, been exhibited in over 120 museums, over 160 exhibitions. So we are grateful for that support. Thank you, Jordan. Judy Pfaff. So I had the pleasure of spending time with Judy last night.
Drinking.
Yes. at a local restaurant, which everybody has said, wow, Roanoke. You walk down the street, you see the galleries alive, you see the universities in our area, but also that flair of the different restaurants. So she is an American artist born in London. And known mainly for installation art, sculptures, and paintings, prints. So across the scape, received numerous awards for her work, John D. and Catherine T. MacArthur Foundation Fellowship, grants from the John Simon Guggenheim Memorial Foundation, National Endowment for the Arts, elected to the American Academy of Arts and Sciences. So I know the list goes on, Judy, and there's no way to say everything as part of it. And you talked about, that part of being instrumental in that studio arts program and still at Bard College, which I've heard across the scape from artists and from museums and how important that is. So we thank you for sharing your work with us, but being such a mentor across many. And Nikola Lopez, American contemporary artist known for her drawings, prints, installations, and collages, born in Santa Fe, New Mexico, and studied at the Visual Arts School in Brazil, as well as earned BA and MFA in Visual Arts from Columbia University, and lives in Brooklyn, New York, and teaches at Columbia University. And I will say, she just flew in on that 1:30 flight. We picked her up, and she just was able to go upstairs with Jordan to see the works and the exhibition. And so welcome Jordan, Judy, Nikola, Swoon, and our number of people here from the National Museum of Women in the Arts. And thank you. I'll turn it over to Karl.
Thank you, Cindy, and thank you all for being here today to talk about positive fragmentation from the collection of Jordan D. Schnitzer and his family foundation. One person, unfortunately, Virginia Trainer, who was the curator of this exhibition at the National Museum of Women in the Arts, wasn't able to make it. She just wasn't feeling well this past week. It's an absolutely fabulous exhibition that she has organized. Judy is here with us. Nikola is here with us. But what we have on our slides are just sort of a walk through the exhibition. If you haven't yet seen it, please go upstairs and take a look. There are 6 galleries within the exhibition, each devoted by Virginia Trainer to different topics. But I'd have to say that one thing that I thought was really fabulous about Virginia's organization was that she, focused on various topics, but the topics she focused on, bodies, environments, subtext, meaning language and art, could apply to so many of the works, throughout the show. And Jordan speaks so passionately about sharing these works with the public that I thought maybe we'd ask him to start and just tell us a little bit about the origins of the exhibition and what this project means to him.
Sure. Well, the origins of this collection was we had in Portland a wonderful director, John Buchanan, and his wife, Lucy. He was there 10 years, did a fabulous job like Cindy's doing for all of you. And he went on to the Fine Arts Museum in San Francisco, passed away. His wife continued to do art consulting, so she got involved with the National Museum of Women in the Arts to help with their fundraising to redo their amazing building in downtown Washington. So she called up and said, I've got an idea for you. There are phenomenal people there. How about doing a show with the National Museum of Women in the Arts? I said, you bet. As I say to any museum director and curator that calls up. We're pretty easy. So that began this wonderful relationship with Susan Sterling and Ginny, the curator. And so what happens then and how these things work is she came out to Portland, and while we have a 56,000 warehouse that holds these thousands of artworks that I've been patiently building up, we also have 180 binders. And I've always found it easier for the curators and directors to work with these binders. It's a more tactile experience than going online and looking at a computer of all these works. So they usually go into a conference room, we wheel all these books in, and they spend their time, and then they sort of make an initial list, and then come and say, hey, this is what we like to borrow, what do you think? My reaction is the same every time. What you've picked is fabulous, but you've also left out this one and this one and this one and this one. And the response is the same. We don't have enough room for all of them. So the National Museum, Women of the Arts Museum, which is under construction, almost finished up. So they borrowed the Katzen Museum at American University for this exhibition. And it was held last spring, and it was wonderful to walk in and see these amazing artists. Like all of you, I hope, I live with art in my home, and that art is sort of the art I wake up to and fall asleep to. As I keep buying, we add about 1,000 pieces a year to the collection, and I buy it either on the auction sites or with the publishers, and then it goes to my collection manager, Catherine Malone, and she sneaks it in the warehouse, and I never see it. So finally, when we have these openings, I'm as amazed and eyes big as saucers and when I walked in the Katzen Gallery. What's wonderful, and I don't go to all of the openings, we had 20 last year around the country. This year, I think it's 18. But it's really fun if any of you have seen any exhibition a second time or third time, because each museum has different mass, wall, ceiling heights, light, and whatever, and then the magic of curators that move things around a bit. And I know it was exciting for the ladies and Tony Podesta from Washington, D.C. that came in this morning to see the work again and see it in a different light. As amazing as the Katzen exhibition was, this was phenomenal too. And different work spoke to me, and I think to all of us in different ways. But the real treat is having these artists here and seeing their own work and their work in the context of other artists they've known or knew of and oftentimes admired so much.
Thank you, Jordan. This exhibition was largely, the title of the exhibition was largely inspired by an essay written by Lucy Lepard, a wonderful feminist art historian who worked in the 60s and 70s and into very recent times. So, and it really engages this idea of the collage aesthetic. And we might ask Judy and Nikola if how they see that figuring into their works. And let me just we have a picture of the gallery where Judy Pfaff's work appears along with that of Micheline Thomas. There's another slide. There at the far end of the gallery is the other work in the exhibition by Judy Pfaff, Target Garden and Lily Pad. It's a wonderful selection of work that was created at Print Studios. Tandem Press. Yes. Yeah. And many of the works in the exhibition were produced with the collaboration of master printers at major print workshops within this country. I don't know if people realize that this kind of printmaking would not be possible with incredible studio resources and technicians.
For both of us, Nikola and I, we do many other things besides prints. And for me, printmaking was try to cool it, Judy. Try to do something that someone actually could buy. And I don't know if you know this, but they put the down payment on my house and studio. So, and when you go to a print publisher, and the one that I go to all the time, the only one, is Tandem Press in Madison, Wisconsin, which is connected to the university. They will do anything for you. Anything. And I don't get anyone who will do anything. That's the only place. So, the kids who work with me are like, Judy, are you sure? There, it's like, whatever. And the thing is, I'm not paying for the lights. I'm not paying for the paper. I'm not paying for it. So, and for me, because I'm mostly a sculptor and do kind of huge things, it's like this grace period that I'm given to kind of, and I do things that I've never done before there because they have this equipment and these incredible collaborators who, like I say, are just so not only gentle, but they're skilled and fun. And we go out at night drinking. This might be a theme here. Yeah. And I go every few years, sometimes every 5 years, and what I notice is there's a whole new body of work. The stuff that's in this show, the pieces that are in this show, are all photogravures, and they were in collaboration with a great artist, printer named Lothar Osterberg. And photogravure is this odd and old-fashioned technique. And he's kind of one of the few that do it. There are a few others, but there's a guy in, is it Portland? Is Paul Mulrooney? He's in Portland. And they came from Crown Point Press, which is this other kind of very elegant press in San Francisco. But for me, and I think most people who do prints, it's like a kind of it's easier, not easier, it's just like a way to just spill and get things done and get the variations. Like if I'm doing something, it's like I'm not going to print that in 12 different colors to see which one I like, but they will do that for you, I also want to tell you that week before I came here, I went to New York City and I saw 4 bodies of work in major galleries which were prints. That never happens. So you have, I think, and Jordan has a beautiful space. Nicole Eisenman has like an amazing show of beautiful work. Gagosian had Jonas Woods. There's Derek Adams. There's Pat Steer. Prints have always been like the underdog. Not the underdog, but just like, there's also Prince. So you've done that. I think you've done that. And it's also like ceramics has been raised. Yeah. Photography was raised, probably 10, 15 years ago. So the idea of going to New York City and major galleries and seeing a show of prints is unreal, right?
It's amazing.
It's amazing. And I think you kind of put us on the map here, Jordan, so thank you.
Well, Jordan and his team made a special effort to include the print workshops on the labels at the exhibition, which is something worth paying attention to, because it's an illustrious body of print workshops that have grown up in this country in the post-war era.
And I think many of you know the history, but there have been prints around since the late 1500s. You can actually buy at the auction houses an Albert Dürer from 1584 something for $2,000, $3,000. They would, wood block, etching stone, these etchings, and they would just print them unnumbered till they wore the stone out. But it wasn't really, and most of these artists all took printmaking in school, but it wasn't really till June Wayne opened a facility named Tamarind on Tamarind Street in Los Angeles in the early 60s, and she decided to help train people to be master printers. And they then went out throughout the country and started at ULA and Gemini and Crown Point Press with Catherine Brown in the early 60s. And what that's done is it's allowed, while many artists have their own press in their own studio, but if we take, for instance, the late Chuck Close, well, a lot of his prints were done at Pace in New York. they went through the printing operation 130, 150 times. So you put you come up with your image and you put red and you put it in 8 places and you put it in the press and you smash it down and there's red and you put it in the drying bin and then you do another 100 pages like that, 10 artist proofs, 3 printer proofs, whatever. So the advantage of these publishing houses, not that artists can't do their own prints at home, their studio, is they have technological wizards that delight and can spend the time to take her dreams and goals and her expressions and give it an amazing additional voice that on her own she might not have the time or patience to do. So I always put these printers on a pedestal, and they're often not given much recognition, but they're incredible. And what's fun to watch is the partnership between them. Like James Reed, who just retired from Gemini, worked with Ellsworth Kelly for 30 years, and the way they would talk to each other and send things back and forth in the mail and then make these works and go back, it's like a marriage. And over time, they could speak for each other. And it's a magical thing that's happened post-World War II that we all benefit from. Now, I have thousands of paintings, sculptures, all sorts of work. The reason why I've focused in this collection on prints and multiples is the affordability, and since I'm building this teaching collection to serve you, it was more affordable and easier to buy lots of work by. We could fill all those spaces just with Judy's phenomenal work, or Nikola's. We've got some shows too. So it's like all the mediums. And I'm often asked, well, what do you think about when people start using Xerox machines or computers or whatever medium an artist wants to use? Why should that be criticized? We should embrace it and welcome them to use whatever techniques, medium, materials for their message and voice to reach us. So it's a wonderful thing, and this tandem press is fabulous, and it just so happens that a lot of the work in this show happened to come from tandem.
Yeah.
We are looking at a gallery, the second gallery in the exhibition, that's devoted to issues of environments, both natural environments and built environments. And you see at the end of the slide a projection of Nikola's video work, as well as a series of 6 prints.
I know you can't really see anything in the video. I think it's a relatively blank.
Upstairs,
still.
it's fabulous.
Yeah, go see the real thing. Well, I wanted to return to a couple things that have been said. This idea of collaboration, I think, is so critical and so important in the printmaking, and it's true. I mean, God, the amount of work that I get done when I'm working with an amazing team like the team at Tandem Press or any of the other places that I've worked is phenomenal. Because, even if we could do all the work, which I couldn't, it would take years. It would take years. So there is, there's an efficiency that allows for a certain kind of production and vision also, because you can then concentrate on other things. But the collaboration itself, not just as a means of producing more work or different kind of work, but the collaboration, the experience of really being in conversation, as Jordan, you were saying, you were talking about that, is really an exciting part of making the work and important because it brings different voices into the conversation. And honestly, I think that there's work that I make not only because I have the facilities and that kind of team behind it, but also because I have those conversations and because I'm being exposed to new ways of working and I'm around other artists often, whether the other artist is in the print shop or not, their work is, and I'm seeing it being made. And there's just a very different kind of relationship to the conversation around making. But I also think that it feeds into this idea of collage that you were asking about. And I mean, many of the prints in here actually really do use tactics of collage. Not all of them do. I think Judy and I both definitely do. And I can say that variability and multiplicity that's kind of inherent in printmaking is something that I draw on very heavily as a means to make collage, because I'm using printmaking for its capacity to produce copies and variations on those copies to then use as raw material. I don't know what the image is going to look like when I start out, but I know what the pieces are going to be. And then once I have all those pieces, I can bring them into an image and kind of put them together. And so it's it's an invention that happens and a kind of improvisation with those pieces. But it's also there's something about kind of collaboration and collage that go hand in hand. And thinking about the the title, I have not read the Lepard essay, but I do think about the world being fragmented in so many different ways right now, and the work of bringing it back together, and the work of even envisioning different worlds and different ways of bringing things into conversation and bringing kind of all the multiple challenges that we're faced with, into different, more positive relationships. So I would say that I'm really interested by the title because it is about fragmentation, but it's also about a positive kind of bringing back together. And I think that that's mirrored even in the kind of working process that many of these works really depend upon.
I have to say that a lot of people have, in the galleries that I've spoken with, have even seen within your work, which seems to take various kinds of construction materials and abstractly collage them, but have even interpreted it in relation to recent tragedies of the collapse of cities and earthquakes and things like that. While the video is also uniquely, it's a drawn video in many ways that builds up various structures throughout the history of art, and then sees them collapse and rebuild.
No, I think that that's right, and there's some things that that I make, and I'm not sure what resonance they might have in the world, especially afterwards. So some of these connections might be being made with events that have happened post creation of the work, and I think that that's also really important. It's not only about what I think I'm putting into it; it's about what somebody else finds in it, and that's really exciting. Also, as an artist, to see what other people bring to it and how they make it kind of alive. But yes, there is a lot about parts of urban environments and this kind of building up. And I wouldn't say that I'm illustrating the collapse of a building, but there is something about those innards of buildings, of construction materials that aren't always visible. And in this sense, there may be, it's kind of questionable. Is it the aftermath of something that's fallen down? Is it something that's actually maybe even growing, that's maybe even taking on its own shape, that's maybe more like a tumbleweed or a dust bunny of, kind of urban detritus? There's something kind of humorous, but also very sinister about it. And maybe likewise with the video, which is actually called The Babel Cycle. Mm-hmm. And so it does draw on not only kind of old, you're right, structures that can be found in architectural and art history, and some, you can look close and you can say, oh, there's the Eiffel Tower. Oh, there's the, is this the Twin Towers? Oh, is this the, but there also are kind of visionary architecture references and just imagined architecture, and it all builds up and then it falls apart. And then it all builds up again, and then it falls apart. And so it is about this kind of aspiration to build something, but then the kind of failure, and that's built into that ambition in a way. And I think that infuses all of the work, this kind of urban technological wonder that's also carries its own kind of destructive potential.
We are so lucky to have Judy and Nikola here. They are longtime colleagues. Judy has been very... Yes. I say Judy has been teaching at Bard College up in the Hudson Valley for...
Nikola.
Exactly.
I know good stuff when I see it. Yeah.
And when I called up Nikola to see if she could possibly make it here to Roanoke for these celebrations this weekend, I just sort of dropped that Judy Pfaff, not knowing this relationship, that Judy Pfaff was going to be here. And Nikola's redirected, Judy, yeah, I'm there.
Me too. I was like, yay, Nikola, yeah.
So, and there are interesting... parallels in your practices and the relation it has to this larger body of work also that we see within the exhibition. as I said, the exhibition is divided into various themes, but the themes that are introduced within each section of the exhibition can sort of be applied across the entire exhibition to various works. So it's really sort of a tool to help people, generate ideas and interest and about the works on view in any specific gallery. I guess I would say that both of your works are in rooms that are devoted to the issues of environments in the broadest sense. Built environments, man-made environments, as well as natural environments, which I guess I see as a dichotomy that both of your works really move across. Certainly, Judy, within your imagery and within your installation work from early in your career.
Because both of us are sculptors too, there's a demand, sometimes it's oh, that looks good, but it's awfully flat, So I look at something for a long time, it's okay, I know there's a print in there somewhere, but right now it's nothing, it's sort of empty. So then when my collaborators leave at night, I cut things up and go into the press and do things. And it's something when someone says, "What do you want us to do?" And it's I don't know yet. So at night, I get to muck it up. I get to throw the cog into the works. I get to add all kinds of things to make it come alive. And I think because there is something quite beautiful, if you do a dry point on a copper sheet and run it through, if you do nothing and run it through the press, it will really look good. There's something about the press, it just does, doesn't it? I mean, I'm not even making that up. So, I might be making it up. But the nature of just adding, subtracting, finding from the kind of base of the print, something else to come about, for me, that's the funnest thing. Like the piece in the show here, which is unusual for me because it's black and white and it is a photogravure, but it is from the Portland garden. So I thought, Japanese garden in Portland. So I thought, oh, this was chosen because you're from Portland. Anyway, I don't think that, so.
I also spent 20 years on that board and helped build half of it, and you don't know, but the whole new $35 million
that is
new
the
center
best
is the Jordan
garden.
Schnitzer
If you ever get to Portland, yeah.
Kumakenga, the famous Japanese architect, did
It's
a phenomenal
unbelievable.
job, yeah.
And every picture you take of that garden looks like a Japanese print. It's amazing. Yeah. It's amazing. So that one actually is full of wax. There's hand painting on it. And it's also the reverse of the print, because when I folded it up, which I needed to do for whatever reason, because I wanted it to look like it was old-fashioned or something, the scored lines didn't read on the correct side. The wax broke in a different way on the reverse side. So those prints are reversed.
Really?
Yes. I was not supposed to tell you that. But that thing about finding the image, making it come to life, because prints they do look good, but they kind of can seem like not a painting. Mm-hmm. So I always wanted it to be itself really physical, really there, really have something,
Well, I think that's a place where our work overlaps in many ways. Is that kind of, it's process driven.
Yeah, it's process
right?
driven.
And there's a real engagement, not with, there are images that are great. There's a way that you might think you want it to look at the end, but if you're like me, you start, you're like, this is what it's going to look like, and then I end up way over there. But I need to have that to begin, and then I need to let myself kind of go someplace completely different. But it's the process that also then not just informs where I get to, but that reads in the work itself. And I think that the way that I've seen us make prints really does that. And I think that also ties back to the idea of environment as something that's living and something that's not finished and framed and finite. And they're both really representing environments that are kind of in a state of evolution or change, in some ways. And I know that, the title of the printed works of mine that are hanging in the gallery are called Urban Transformations. And so there really is this idea of change kind of locked into even the title. But I think that there's also in the way that you're describing that kind of folding of the print and the wax and there's a delicacy and even a fragility, and I think of that environmental kind of, those issues and how the environment and the built environment, what you pointed to as the kind of human built environment and the natural environment, which I don't think are totally separable in many ways, but.
Well, I think your use of or allusion to actually construction materials, architectural materials, pipes, various other kinds of insides of architecture, they become very organic.
Yeah.
In your hands in many ways. So
No, that's right, and I love. I mean, even in the way that you framed that question of the kind of, or not the question, but when you pointed to both of our works as really crossing the boundaries between those worlds, but things that appear to be really permanent and are not, and the things even the environment also has this kind of impermanence and fragility, especially right now. I mean, spring is a month earlier.
Let me ask you a question. I think we're all fascinated by how you work, and you both teach. Now, you're teaching at Columbia. You're head of the print department, and you were the dean at Otis, and you're teaching at Bard. How is teaching? I remember talking to John Baldessari about all this for years till even. How does teaching influence your art? What effect does it have?
I teach undergraduates at Bard, and they're loosey-goosey. I was reading today, it's like, when do they learn to make their bed? Or who teaches them to? It's like, but they're so smart. They're really smart. Bard is, I think, one of the great schools, even though it's a liberal arts college and not RISD or an art school. They do keep me on my toes, that's for sure. I don't know if they directly influence, but it does keep you, if not young at heart, like confused. Yeah. And that is helpful, so you don't go in thinking you know everything. But young people, they're so smart today, and they're beautiful, and they bring things to the table that astound me. But when I go back to the studio, I kind of forget all of that and go back to my own stuff. But I do think there's a refresher course in everything. So that, I think, is very good, yes.
Yeah, I mean, I just pretty much echo that I love teaching. And for me, it's those conversations, and I don't know that there are things that I do in my studio where I can say, oh, I saw this idea, or this is building off of something specific. It's not, that doesn't come in that way, but it comes in because of the conversations and the energy and the things that, I agree about Bard College. There's some of the best students.
And it's easy teaching. I don't bother them.
Oh my God! Sometimes that's the best way to teach. And being at Columbia, they're also I work with both undergraduates and graduates, and they're very different relationships with themselves as artists. And many of the students that I work with are actually not intending to be artists. And that is also really exciting because they're thinking in completely different ways, and they're studying economics, and they're studying language and linguistics and religion and philosophy and genetics, and they bring that into the classroom, and that's where I feel like I have this banquet in every discussion of ideas and excitements, and that to me is just, it's so exciting, and that is hugely important as an artist, whether you get it through teaching or through reading or through other artists that you're looking at or people or another job that whatever it is, but being fed, I think, is really important, and I find that in teaching.
No, it's such a wonderful question, Jordan, because we are very definitely sitting here with two of the greatest educators in the arts of our times. Judy is modest, but the program that she, in a sense, launched and has nurtured at Bard College for many years is one of the premier MFA programs in this country. They have an interesting structure in which people can go for 3 summers and earn their MFA, which allows that program, I think, to take advantage of talents throughout New York or even across the nation, in the sense that visiting scholars, visiting artists can come during the summers when they're free from their, yearly jobs at other institutions, and has also drawn just a wealth of people from New York City and the New York art world to teach intensively. Nikola being one of the premier examples of Judy's recruitment of amazing faculty. And Judy is still in angst that Nikola has left Bard, but is now doing like amazing things at Columbia University.
Yeah. So I have another question. That is, I think all of us are curious. You do this work in your studio, and then it sells or gets into collections. You don't see it for years, and you've both had lots of exhibitions. So when you walked into this exhibition and you see your work, what do you think? And in terms of the relationship with the other artists are there. Now, Swoon was wonderful this morning saying, "Oh my God, Jordan, I'm with Louise Bourgeois." Okay, and you were so fresh and enthusiastic and excited, just warmed my heart. But what did you both think when you walk into an exhibition of your work, and what goes on in your minds?
Well, the pieces that were chosen for this show, I was sad when I made these things. I was stuck doing this huge project in Walla Walla, Washington, actually. And I was taking lots of photographs and trying to figure out how to get out of there. And I can tell, that's what I can tell when I look at my work. It's like it follows my life. It follows where I've been, what I've seen. So there isn't a huge conceptual or narrative. It's really like trying to keep up with my life. And what I can see without knowing it is was a moodiness in those works and a kind of atmosphere of hesitation or longing or whatever those words might be. When I was doing it, it was like, oh, that's a beautiful picture of Portland, like the garden. So it's like that. I am pulled back into wherever I was at that time.
Like reading a diary?
Like reading a diary, exactly like that. And I always thought I was terrible in school. I don't know if you can imagine that. But so making art has always sort of been like my reading, like how I educate myself. I now know a lot about photogravure, so that was a big education. I know about this and that with getting the year of the router or the year of the, whatever it was. Yeah. So that's how I teach myself. That's my education. So realizing that photogravure for this moment was the exact, for me, medium, conveyor of what I wanted. I didn't know that at the time, so it's, so that. But also, let me tell you, this show is so great. I've seen pieces of artists that I knew of their work. I've seen a few things, but this is really a great overview and a lot of work. I'm especially interested in the Cecily Brown because it's so painterly and so fresh, isn't it? It's so nice. But there's so many ideas and so many things that I had never seen. So for me, again, this was my education and what can happen in prints. I've got a few ideas I could steal from there. But anyway, terrific. Thank you.
I mean, it's such a fantastic collection of works. It's a great, I think it really is a wonderful gathering of artists and of women artists, contemporary and very recent. It's thrilling, like to walk in. It's a beautiful show, and to have my work in conversation with people who contemporaries that I really admire, mentors that I really, think the world of, work that feels kind of mind-opening and exciting, formally, technically, conceptually. It's really, really broad. And for me, it's always exciting to be in, who doesn't love a group show? Like, you love a solo show, but the group show puts, if well done, which this really is, it puts your work in conversation with other artists that you don't have an opportunity to do under other circumstances. And it brings different things out. And I love, seeing my works right there, opposite Sarah Morris, Polly Apfelbaum. It makes me see my work in different ways. I mean, the coloristic kind of conversations, the way that architecture abstracts, with a Sarah Morris, that gives maybe a different perspective, even for me, on the work that I've made, is always really, really exciting. And I think that this show and this overall selection, but also this hanging of it, is really stunning for those conversations that arise.
I think we're going to open it up to questions from the audience, because yes.
Really broad, addressed to all of you. What do you think of the whole AI thing?
Oh no, I'll say something. I mean, I think it's a long conversation, and clearly nobody's going to exhaust it today, because it's going to be another conversation tomorrow. Yeah, but I really I can go off on lots of tangents. I read a lot of science fiction. I can see lots of different possibilities out there, but I really also think that as far as the arts go, it's a tool. It's a fantastic, amazing tool to be careful of, tool to really, think carefully about, but every tool is. And I do think that this has different possibilities than many other tools do, but I think that it's a tool, and I think that optimistically, because that's where I've got to approach it, I think we're going to see a lot of very interesting work.
Yeah, I don't think that's totally the point of concern, though. And I think that the point of concern is more copyright issues, which is not the first time this has surfaced, but it takes it to a whole new level.
What worries you about it?
Huh?
What do you think about it?
I'm not at a point to really have an opinion, quite honestly. I think it's a brave new world. It's here.
Sure is.
So it's just how we deal with it and what controls are in place. There's a lot of other things happening too.
Yeah.
I think
I have a question. Do you think in 10 years, like, art schools are no longer necessary, just the AI code?
No.
AI what?
AI code? No. Art schools.
You can learn to code and you'll make a piece of art in 5 minutes with AI.
You can. But it's not going to make the same art that happens under circumstances. I also, although I love teaching, love being in an academic environment, I don't think that school is the only way to make art. And I don't think that AI is going to make any of us obsolete, schools or people or conversations. And I also think that, you talked about the regulations that are in place. It depends on all those things. I think it also is the opportunity. I am very skeptical of our collective ability to take every opportunity that's offered. But I think that it also offers the opportunity to really think about why copyright is important, or what it is that we value about creativity, or how we actually want to talk about working together in an era where we have a very different relationship to technology. And I think that there's the opportunity for some amazing conversations to happen. And there also are cautionary. So maybe we can have more of that conversation after this. But I think there's a lot of potential in terms of art making.
Nothing will replace human creativity. And I think we will see in these next 10 years in particular, explosions in healthcare, where doctors will have so many more tools available. I just did some lectures of those. I think if we go back in time go back to the Industrial Revolution, as society has evolved from one sophisticated new method of manufacturing, communication, whatever, all that's done is helped artists be even better artists. It's not eliminated them, it's not threatened them, it's prodded and poked them to, again, what I say about artists is they're always chroniclers of our time. They're the ones either do things that are pretty to make us smile, or they force us to deal with issues in front of us. Whether we're talking about Egyptians, Aztec, caves of France, whatever. They're supposed to take us and shake us up and make us think about our values and society's values. And they will continue to do that. How that technique, no different than the Xerox machines that David Hockney used, or the big printers that he's using. He's been at the forefront of pushing the envelope in that way. Holography is going to be fascinating. The whole way art is is shown may change. You may walk into rooms. Education's going to change. A teacher will hit a button and you'll suddenly be in Gettysburg in the middle of a battle, seeing what happens, or traveling anywhere around the world. But nothing will replace that hand-eye, that heart, that soul, doesn't matter how many computers there are, of their job of inspiring us and leading us to the best that we do in society.
Any other questions? We have one right over here.
Thank you all for being here. Nikola, my question's for you. You mentioned improvisation being part of your process with working with the prints. So the works upstairs, they're a series. So I'm wondering, is the three-dimensional aspects, are those the same with each print, or are those improvisational?
This question was about the series of prints, Urban Transformations, published by Tandem Press, and maybe circling back to this idea of improvisation and asking about whether the three-dimensional aspects to those prints are the same in each one or whether they're improvised, right? Thank you for the question. Improvised. They're totally improvised. And the way that those prints happened were, I can't remember how many, but it's a whole different mix of different mediums. There were maybe, 4-8 etching plates and several kind of photolithos. So without going into the kind of technical nuts and bolts of it, just different ways of making images. But there was a finite number of images, and there were almost like laying out kind of a toolbox. And there were literally maybe some nuts and some bolts and some kind of snow fencing and some plumbing parts and some switches and some wires, all drawn out separately and then printed and then cut out. And some of the things are printed on top of each other. And then I have a whole, like a Lego set. My 8-year-old gets a Lego set, and it's supposed to make, the hyper rocket ship with the yada yada, and the first thing he does is meticulously follow every single instruction and, get to the end and you've got your rocket ship. And then I cross my fingers that he's going to be able to part with it. And usually he drops it or somebody else comes over to play, and then he has to make something else. Right? And that's where it gets interesting, is where it turns into something else. And that's where I feel like, I might have I've just made myself this kind of Lego set, but I don't know exactly what it's going to look like. And so then I start, saying, oh, this configuration is cool, and these go together here. And then, oh, no, that looks bad. And I change that. Oh, no, I like this one. I'm going to start another one. And so then I start, I've got 2 or 3, and then it turns into 6. And then, this part weaves in and out. And this is why Tandem works forever on them, because it takes a long time to print each one and then cut each one out and then kind of loop it over in exactly the same way if you're making a small edition. But they are individually, they're improvised. But I'll add that it's also important to me that they're improvised, but they do have these echoes of repetition in them, much like the way that you walk out the street and it's like that's the same car parked behind the same car, and that building has the same windows as the one down the street, and this kind of mass-produced landscape that we live in is echoed by that kind of repetition that is about mass production in some ways, but also individuality and variation and improvisation within that.
Other questions?
No.
Hi. So this question is for Judy. And this morning I was saying that the first time I saw your work was at Pratt. You had done this beautiful installation in a gallery, and my experience of your work was almost like, in the 60s and 70s, people kind of opened it up, and Walter de Maria was doing the mud room, and people were sort of taking this broader sense of what artwork could be. But I felt that you were the first person that I recognized that was then going, okay, now we've blown it open, and now let's bring some of the language of the visual language that exists in a painting, but now we're doing it in this exploded space of a room. So can you talk about how you gravitated to that?
Yeah, my degrees are in painting, from Yale even. I'm not fond of that place.
Tell him who taught you at Yale.
Oh, Al Held was my teacher, who was formidable. handsome, looked like Marlon Brando when he was my teacher. But I was not involved with the language, the critiques that were going on there. It was like all these guys talking to themselves. The people I was looking at the time were like Yvonne Rainer, dancer, Simone Forti, just dancers, videographers, crazy people like Vito Acconci, anything that wasn't painting. And that language, which every time the conversation started, they would say something like, and what do you think of Piero della Francesca? Or Cézanne. It's like, really? Really? So anyway, I got to New York City, $150, 2,000 square feet, Soho. And I had 13 puppies. And I was on Grand and Green, which is now owned by John McEnroe. I should have stayed. But Canal Street was right there. And I thought, a lot of what imagery we have, we're surrounded by building. You get a studio, you're putting in a bathroom, you're building everything from scratch. So that becomes sort of like you're touching things, you need something, you build it, you put it together. I was also working in a frame shop, Jed Bart frame shops. So there were lots of things. Don't paint, learn something, do something else. So Canal Street was my toolbox. And because I was building this place, I could destroy the place too. I could cut into the floors, the walls, put things where I needed them. So that introduction to the physical world. And when I would come home, the dogs would have eaten it. So that began this wonderful, and also I was working with Trisha Brown, another incredible dancer who really loved artists and, the art world. And so it was just like, get out of that painting conversation that always depressed me. And you were never as good as Cézanne or Piero della Francesca. Rightly so, you weren't. That was true. So the physical stuff opened up everything, and now I'm like so old-timey. So it's sort of funny, because at the time it was kind of like naughty or mischievous or something, But that's my 3D story from painting. And I still think Yale has this fix on the conversation.
I think so in some ways their department is also, and I do think highly of Yale and have friends and colleagues there, but it's a very different structure, and their departments are separate. And so I think that's part of why they frame in some ways painting as painting, because that's the department.
Jessica Stockholder.
No one's asked you any questions about being a woman artist. Okay, and certainly we talked last night about Judy Chicago and the very difficult time she had and so forth. But no one's hit you with that article about your feelings, and you're a little more senior than Nikola and Spoon and so forth, and certainly younger than. And we talked before about, I asked you about your relationship with Ellsworth Kelly and Jasper Johnson, Rauschenberg, all those people, because you were a decade or more younger than them, whatever. But what has it been like? And are you feeling now that as a woman artist, you're equally accepted, all three of you, or are you still battling?
I think women artists rule, And I can't notice the difference. I mean, I don't go into that show and say, oh yeah, where, it just looks like great stuff to me. Yeah. And I think that bridge has, hopefully, and with lots of other kinds of,
But can I add something here? I just want to say that I think that, as a female, as a woman artist, it has been incredibly important to me in this generation. And I still think that there are certainly challenges in many directions and challenges for many people. In different ways, but it has been so important to have a really strong generation of women artist mentors, personal connections, but also work that's incredibly strong and also visible. And I think that, whatever your experience has been, it has been really important to generations that have followed, because I think that a lot of the work that's even in this show would not be there without, Judy, you in particular. and other women of your generation and before also. I mean, I think of a few others who are in this show who are incredibly important. Betty Saar. Louise Bourgeois. I mean, there's some of these women artists who are incredible as artists in any capacity, but also incredibly important as women artists in building a strong community that we have today.
I have a funny comment. We were watching Nicola's work, and we were wondering if Nikola was a man or a woman.
Yeah, I get.
She said it was a man because it looked masculine, it had a masculine energy. She was wrong.
Interesting. Well, it's funny, but you know what? I will tell you, you're not alone. I arrived once for a show, and to be fair, like Nikola is, I think of it as a very nice woman's name, but in Italy, certainly, it's often Nikola, a man's name. And throughout Latin America, I think it can be, either way. And I got there once for a show and was told, "Oh, it's nice to see you. When does Mr. Lopez get here?" Oh yeah, no, it's true. But your imagery is so masculine and so technological and so. But I think that's also, again, that is important, and I think of that as something important that it's not, And we think about the way that we gender even landscapes or imagery, and maybe that's okay that you thought that I was, that I was a man, because it opens the conversation up.
Let me just finish, because I think you're watching. We got to finish up here, but we've had 180 exhibitions like this at 120 museums. Some museums have had multiple exhibitions like the one here. And it was wonderful coming here 3 years ago and seeing the stunning building and the wonderful exhibition spaces, and that Pop Power show was curated exceptionally well and fun to be here, and so we were asked back another time. But you have a wonderful museum, and you've got a fabulous staff, and I don't say that just because they're here, but I was telling the folks last night that I've bitched at American Art Forum because they're so New York-centric, and that's logical because their writers go to the openings in New York, the gallery's all pitching about the latest artists, and it's very, centralized there. And I keep saying there are amazing regional museums throughout this country, phenomenal staffs and great cultural leaders that have stepped up to support those museums that lead the way in so many cities in the Midwest and all over the country, other than and this is an example of one you should be so proud. I'm not trying to be presumptuous to tell you about your community, so proud of this museum, its history, and your team. Okay? And this exhibition at the Katzen Museum was stunning. Okay, you have more space, as we've mentioned, and it looks totally different here, and it's not better or worse, it's just different, and it is extraordinary. The way that Karl and your staff pick the colors on the walls, and the way you pick things. So what you've done here, because for me it's all about the art and the audience. I remember the first time I had some artists come to a show once in a while, but I remember the first retrospective show was an artist named John Buck, his wife Deborah Butterfield, and it was the first time I walked into a show with an artist. I thought, my God, what if he doesn't like the way it was curated, even though I had nothing to do with it? The next time was John Baldessari, and at the Legion of Honor in San Francisco, when he walked in, and he had a work called Fallen Easel, a major piece first and whatever, and we walked around, and he said to me, Jordan, I never thought I'd see all these works again. And I thought, well, you must keep artist proofs of everything, but then dummy here, they're probably in a drawer. They're not all framed, okay? And so with this extraordinary curatorial effort, you've honored the work, you've honored the artist, made me feel good. So thank you. Extraordinary job you did.
Thank you, Jordan. Thank you for sharing your phenomenal collection with our community. We are proud. We're proud to be in this community, share arts, connect art and audience, as you said. And we look forward to the upcoming months to have positive fragmentation from the collections of Jordan D. Schnitzer and his family foundation here at the Taubman Museum of Art. Thank you for such an engaging conversation. Thank you for your questions, for being here, for your care for this museum and for this community. Thank you, Judy. Thank you, Nikola. And thank you, Swoon, as well as the National Museum of Women in the Arts. What a pleasure to have this exhibition organized and curated and be here to share further for this region. So welcome to our continued exploration and conversation in the galleries in Positive Fragmentation. We're open till 5 p.m. today, and you saw the action continues with Roanoke Arts Pop. So thank you.
Thank you.